Good morning. Happy Easter. So guess what I'm talking about this morning? Resurrection and purification. Easter is always established by the date of the full moon of Aries. It is always established as the first Sunday following the full moon after the vernal equinox. So this year, the vernal equinox was Friday, March 22nd. This year, there are two Aries solar festivals. The first festival was Wednesday, March 20th, which was a couple of days before the vernal equinox. The second full moon of Aries was this past Friday, April 19th, and thus Easter. He is following, right? When we celebrate the energies of Aries, along with Easter, the combination of both the Easter and Aries energies provides us with a double opportunity to strive toward purification and perfection, regeneration, and resurrection. We know that we have not yet reached self-perfectment, but most of us are at some point, at some place along our various incarnations, we made a decision to travel the path of perfectment and resurrection. This is a particularly difficult path, but spiritually most rewarding as an unfolding human soul. Rewarding because it places us on the lightning speed path of striving, giving our soul an opportunity to better serve our family, and then our group, and then our nation, and finally humanity. It also reduces the number of redundant incarnations that makes each life lived by living 3 to 4 lives at one time. 3 to 4 lifetimes, in other words, in one incarnation. In order to do this, we need to continuously surpass our present level of achievement. So disciples on this path are those who will make use of these energies as a means to graduate to higher levels of consciousness. In other words, expansion of consciousness, greater awareness, until it puts us in conscious contact with the supermundane world, the fiery worlds, the spiritual triad, the ashram, and master. With each progressive stage, a disciple-initiate will be able to surpass their present level of consciousness and then penetrate into the deeper mysteries of life. You can see how this truly is an extraordinary path, and it causes us to live an extraordinary life, not the common life, but a life that is centered universally on humanity and not on self-centeredness. Life is given to us so that we can strive toward self-perfectment, but it's not for self-aggrandizement. People think, and I'm speaking about mass consciousness, the masses believe that perfectment is to have the biggest and the best house in the neighborhood, to have a bank account that surpasses the majority in content. The masses believe perfectment is seen in those who have the greatest power. But when you look at the great ones does not mean the most religious ones. The great ones are those that have come into a life, into an incarnation, to bring greater light to humanity. And in that light, they serve humanity. There is their power. They don't talk about their bank account. They don't hire maids and who else do you hire? When you live on an estate, for them an estate will be a burden because it's earthly, it's mundane, and it will anchor them to such a point that they don't have the freedom to travel, the freedom to move from one country to another, to another, to another, freedom to write books and give lectures and to speak to humanity at a universal level. The reason these great ones come into incarnation is resurrection, to reignite a memory in our soul about the purpose of life. Someone told me the other day that they're so grateful that Jesus died so we could live. What does it mean to live? It does not mean to live just for my family. It does not. It does not mean to live just for my country. It means to live for humanity. I received a note today from a member in Ohio saying that she received a note from her friend whose family lives in the country that I'm sorry, I can't remember now, that just had the blasts in the churches and Sri Lanka, thank you. They had the blasts in churches and 5-star hotels. At this point in the news this morning, there were 207 people that had perished. Our president said there were millions. He seemed not to understand the difference. To have millions die in Sri Lanka would have been extraordinary because there are millions of people that live there, as my son reminded me. See, this is a distraction. When we look at the fire that took place in Notre Dame a few days ago, the whole world is focused on that tragedy. Can we not focus the whole world on the purpose of life, which is to see every single life as sacred and to teach people about the sacredness of life? Not how much money you have in your bank account, not how much real estate you have, not how big your family is, because our family is humanity. And if we want humanity to resurrect themselves, to resurrect itself, then we need to bring the teachings of Christ into today's life and not continue to refer to what happened 2,000 years ago, but where are we going to take it into the next 2,000 years? We can look at ourselves today and throughout these days between last Friday, April 19th, and today, but especially today, when we ask ourselves, where do we need to strive? Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's not where do they need to strive. It is not. because that gets you off the hook. This is where ego and vanity and self-centeredness builds upon itself. It's where do we need to strive? Where do we need to strive physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in order to make ourselves more beautiful? Physically beautiful, emotionally beautiful, mentally beautiful. I was thinking, God, I know why. Helen Hayes. Most of you probably don't even know her. I barely knew of her, but she was a very well-known Hollywood actress. And physically, she lived to be a very old age, and physically she was not attractive, but because of her countenance, because of her inner beauty, physically she was beautiful. We measure beauty by how muscular we are, whether we can run a 5K. That's physical beauty. We want to instead look at the beauty within. And when you see beauty within, that beauty radiates to a point where we're blinded by earthly measure and inspired by spiritual illumination. So we want to ask ourselves, how can we purify and resurrect ourselves? Perhaps we will decide to strive to make our emotions clean and shining with pure feelings. Mentally, we all want to be filled with illumination. Spiritually, we want to be fiery. To be fiery means that we are no longer controlled by the lower nature. It means that we are striving to fuse the soul with the chalice and to release ourselves from the mistakes of lifetimes that the personality nature, the elementals of the personality, made. That we have moved from the clockwise wheel to the counterclockwise wheel of the zodiac and are now carefully and with spiritual discipline welcoming the opportunity to pay off our ancient debts from past lives in order to be of greater service to hierarchy and the plan for humanity. This means that we must make the most of our time here on earth, that we are no longer subject to the wills of those around us. Nor do we think, speak, move, and choose our action or to live our life by the imposition of others. Imposition of others is by their prejudice, their bias, their self-centeredness, their so-called power. That we are no longer to the subject of those kinds of wills, nor do we allow others to use us for their own advantage. Credit cards. Isn't that interesting? Just to think that's just one little element of life where people use us for their own advantage. The greed. People are so greedy that they use us for their own advantage. We want humanity to wake up. One by one by one by one, starting with ourselves, to see who is taking advantage over this life that's so sacred that we come into incarnation and we know we live about 75 years if we're lucky. And then we don't want to die. Well, if we don't want to die, why not? Did we live a life that was sacred? Did we resurrect that spirit from the involutionary forces of life to the evolutionary forces of life? We must learn or perfect our ability to be spiritually and esoterically discriminating. Discriminating so that we can, I'm talking about the esoteric gear of discrimination. So don't go, oh! Okay, just stick with me here. Discriminating so we can examine our inner and higher wills in such a way that we can spiritually advance. This is actually a very advanced stage of consciousness. With observation and spiritual discipline, we soon learn how to detach from these inner and outer influences, the ancient past of our personality. See, being spiritual does not mean that you ask your spirit guide to provide you with a parking place. Some people, this is how they see themselves. Look at my spirit guide, got me a parking place. Well, okay. I won't go off to a tangent with that. It's kind of cool, but it does not make you spiritual. I always wondered, what about those Indians? There's always an Indian spirit guide, that finds those parking places. Do they not have anything else to do? So what is discrimination? Mentally, it is the ability to choose the right time, the right thing, and the right direction. Mental discrimination. To never go against the 7 principles of our tradition, which is beauty and goodness, justice, joy, and freedom, striving, and sacrificial service. It is the ability to know what will be useful to the purpose of our soul, the soul of our family, the soul of our country, the soul of the universe, and which things are useless. See, that's a discrimination. Things which are harmful to yourself and to others. It means that you refuse to make any choice that will be destructive to your well-being. How many of us really do this? You look at a piece of bacon and say, it doesn't make any difference. I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of bacon. Well, it seems stupid, but it starts with the little things. We know now bacon is destructive to our physical health. It's just simple as that. What is destructive to the well-being of our family? If we cook for our family, how are we cooking? Are we cooking the best and the most healthy food possible to help our families and even our group stay healthy? So discrimination is an ever-progressing process. So, for example, I was thinking, the reason I talked about the bacon thing is that I just saw in the news that 1 piece of bacon a day, 1 piece of bacon a day leads to colorectal cancer? Is that?
Cervical.
What?
Cervical?
No.
Colorectal.
Colorectal, thank you. 1 slice of bacon a day, and I thought, oh my gosh, when I was little, Mom cooked with bacon grease, and we had bacon every day. Discrimination is an ever-evolving process. As we increase in light, our discrimination becomes increasingly or more and more right. So discrimination is not just about choice. It is about being sensitive to the guidance of our heart. In Sanskrit, discrimination is called buddhi. Look how far removed we have become in defining that word, discrimination. So where whoever is in charge of words these days, Webster or whomever, look how far away from the original meaning they have gotten now with some of these words like discrimination. It is called in Sanskrit buddhi, Buddhi. Discrimination is spiritual insight. It is intuitive perception. It is penetrative insight into the causes of things higher in our higher levels of consciousness, our greater awareness. And discrimination is the compass of the disciple, the illumined one, who is traveling the path of initiation. If we strive, then we will not only surpass our present condition in this life, but we will be living the purpose of our lives. People say, why are you still working at your age? I don't work. I'm striving. This is my life purpose. You don't retire from your life purpose, from the purpose of your soul, unless you're forced to because of poor health. Situations like that. Too many times we become absorbed in the thinking that says, this is the big life, or this is the only life there is, so let's eat and be merry. Actually, this life is just a small moment in the eternal journey. A moment, just one little moment out of eternity. This life is a preparatory life, a life that prepares us for our future incarnations. It is a life that gives us opportunities to make ourselves better and better and more perfect. We must make the most of it right now, no matter what our situation is. We must make our life better and better and make the most of it now. Helena Rourke said, the founder of Agni Yoga said, let us look forward to the holiday of spirit and heart. We shall keep strict spiritual fast in order that we may, in complete purity of body and spirit, welcome Easter, the resurrection of the Spirit. Let us aspire in all our thoughts toward this. Pay attention to what she is telling us. She's talking about Easter. She's talking about the Christ. She's talking about the resurrection of the soul. So when you say, oh, I can't talk to my family because, I believe in esoteric things, do you see how wrong you are in that kind of thinking? Here's the founder of Agni Yoga, the wife of one of the greatest Russian artists that ever lived, and she is saying, let us look forward to the holiday of spirit and heart. We shall keep strict spiritual fast in order that we may, in complete purity of body and spirit, welcome Easter. The resurrection of the Spirit. The resurrection of the Spirit. Let us aspire in all our thoughts toward this. And many of the dull and difficult things of daily life will be eased because in our hearts, we will accept the unavoidable blows and difficulties as part of a great probationership and will live in the joy of the coming future. Resurrection is the fundamental theme of all world religions, past, present, and the future. Resurrection is the spirit in all mankind, in all forms, in all kingdoms. Resurrection of the spirit is the objective of the entire evolutionary process, and this involves liberation from materialism and selfishness. The note and message sounded by the Christ when last on earth was what? Resurrection. But so dark has been humanity, and in its immersion in glamour and illusion, resurrection is only acclaimed on the day of Easter or in the cemetery. This must change. Religion must teach about the resurrection of spirit on a daily basis, not only on Easter. The meaning of resurrection will unfold, we believe, in this 21st century, and its true significance will be realized because there are more and more and more disciples, more and more initiates that are bringing this message back into humanity again. We must stop burying ourselves in materialistic goals and in selfishness. Now, we know in the United States that there is another presidential election coming up in a couple of years, year and a half. We have, 18, 19 people running now for president in the Democratic political party. Okay, pay attention to the message. Who is talking about burying materialistic goals? Pay attention to them. Who amongst those many people have the courage and the daring to talk about the policies, to talk about let's let go of the selfishness of the family and of the country, the nation, and let's resurrect the initial document that our forefathers wrote about and what established the country of the United States, that made it a United States. Think about it. Self-centered thinking is born from selfishness. It's not the political opponent that says, follow me. That's old age. It is the political opponent that says, let us do this together. That's the United States and other countries, of course. A selfish person is one whose life revolves around himself. We have political leaders today whose life is descriptive of a life that revolves only around themselves. See, the misuse of power. It will not continue. It is surefire guaranteed this is not going to continue. Such people become so self-absorbed that they identify life with their own fabrications. It is most serious for a disciple to fall into deception, such deception. A selfish person deceives themselves. It is the most dangerous situation, for from self-deception comes a split personality. Again, Helena Rourke says, Our main problem is to awaken striving in the newcomers. Each one, upon awakening to the necessity of striving, will discover their own potentiality, will develop it in their own way, and thus will enrich the communal treasury. But in order to inspire one another, we must carry this inextinguishable fire in ourselves. We should keep it in complete purity and should struggle with the welter of petty thoughts born of selfishness. Verily, selfishness, she says, is narrowness. But narrowness leads to stagnation and death, while the cosmos exists on the principle of infinity. It is through the reconstruction of our life, from material to spiritual, that we are going to be born again. We want to reconstruct our lives out of the substance of our divine heritage, not our genetics, not our family ancestry, but our divine heritage. Not from the nature of our past mistakes, our darkness, our glamours and illusions, but the substance of our divine heritage. Let's talk about what that is. Let's think about it. Let's study it. That's when we go to lunch and dinner and we're gathering together in groups. Let's talk about what does it mean to live from out of the substance of our divine heritage and not from our past mistakes. For example, a young lady wanted so badly to be a holy person. It was part of her dreams. Because it was such a strong desire, no matter what she did, she felt herself to be a holy angel. Such people are great problems to the world, for their glamours and illusions have become the directors of their life. So how do these things happen? Let's say, for example, when you were sick, your mother read some religious stories, some philosophy, and occasionally said to you that in the future you will teach all this to people. All such moments go into a layer of the person's subconscious mind. And in the future, when they are re-stimulated, these moments are re-stimulated, the person builds a glamour for themselves and thinks, well, I am a holy person. They then imitate whatever is found in their subconscious mind that has been recorded and is convincing them that they are so very holy. We must not construct our lives out of the substance of glamours and illusions, out of power and greed and hatred, but from the beauty of the central sun, as reflected in the heart of Christ and other great ones, those who are recognized as the enlightened sons and daughters of God. Let their lives be reflected in our hearts. The heart is the path of resurrection, the path that leads us to the cosmic heart of the universe and returns our soul to the Father's home. Resurrection for us today is the process of resurrecting ourselves in a continuing manner, moving steadily toward a union with our true self. Resurrection is a process of spiritualizing ourselves, transmuting our lower nature with the light and beauty and love of the higher nature, becoming more spirit than matter. You may say, oh, these are just words. They are. They remain just words. And we can read words from now until we die. And it doesn't change our consciousness. It was last night I received a text from a lovely man who said, "I hope you and your son have a joyful Easter." And then I started thinking, how do I do that? I just lost one of my sons. I just lost my favorite dog. I just lost one of my best friends, her husband. And how do I have a joyful Easter? I went into Agni Yoga and did a word search on joy. I was so humiliated with my wrong thinking when I read over and over and over again the different messages about joy. It put me on the right track. So if you feel depressed today, if you wonder why is life doing this to you and to us and to our families and to this country and to Sri Lanka and so forth, go to the Agni Yoga teaching, do a word search on joy, and you will become filled with joy. So these are the words of the Master that brings illumination to our heart and changes our whole awareness about our present situation. It is in resurrection that we will gain victory over darkness, gain victory over all that is not serving the life of the soul. To gain victory means to use the outer world, the outer life as a vehicle for transformation. The outer life is our day-to-day life, as a vehicle for enlightenment. During the Aries full moon, the first ray energy is given to us, the energy of willpower, the will to initiate. It is a tremendous energy given to humanity to overcome its limitations. This is what resurrection is. It is an ever-progressing victory over our limitations and errors. This is resurrection. It seems very simple. It is an ever-progressing, advancing victory over our limitations. Limitations are opportunities to release our own resources and powers, our own spiritual resources, to evoke a power from the core of our being, that spark of God, to overcome our limitations. Through our efforts, through our striving, we resurrect the glory that is living within each of us, the unfolding human soul. Last Sunday, we said that a spiritual leader is recognized as one who lives a continuous unfolding life. Now we understand why. One of the reasons is they have released the glorious life that is within them. When this glory is resurrected, the one that is within you, that is buried in matter, in anger, in darkness, in emotions, in battles, when it is resurrected, the glory in you is resurrected, then you become victorious. You conquer the life. We forget why we are here, and when we forget why we are here, we lose our path. We have lost our path. In closing, we are on the path of resurrection, which will lead us into a new and higher dimension, into the world of reality and selfless action, of service to the common good. When the spiritual body begins to be organized and to grow, and when your intuitive eye slowly opens and trains itself to see truly, Then there will come the indications that the seed of divinity of Christ, latent within each human soul, is beginning to control and to lead the developing spark into the world of spiritual being, true meaning, and essential values. So this is resurrection.